So one of the things we need to keep an eye on is exactly what we were talking about a second ago, consumer behavior. Now, I can't tell you, really, that I wish consumers would suddenly start spending like it's 1999 again, because we Americans do need to save more. Nonetheless, until we start spending again, we're not really going to come out of this recession. The other of the two things to keep an eye on is the price of risk. Because this is the other bizarre thing that really contributed to this recession. Here's what I mean. During the boom, the price of risk got to be insanely low. Investors seemed to believe that risk had maybe stopped existing, and they were willing to take a lot of it without really getting paid for it. The easy way to measure this was by looking at a particular comparison. I'll tell you what I mean. If you had to choose a date when the economy really started to turn down and this whole mess began, it was about 6 months before the recession officially started. I would propose June 13th, 2007. And the reason is this. Up until that point, the price of risk had been coming down and down and down. So that on the day before that, which would have been June the 12th, the yield on a 10-year government bond, safest investment in the world, was 5.3%. The yield on an index of junk bonds, very risky investments, was only 7.7%. Just a 2.4% difference, representing a huge difference in risk. Well, what happened on June 13th, although nobody knew it at the time, nothing dramatic happened, it's obvious only in retrospect, what happened on June 13th is that spread started to widen again. And it got wider and wider and wider for 18 months until by the end of last year, December of 2008, the yield on that 10-year Treasury bond was 2%. And the yield on the index of junk bonds was about 20%. So that margin of 2.4 had grown to a margin of 20%. The price of risk, having been insanely low, has gotten to be insanely high. It's come back just a little since the end of last year, but only a little. And right now, investors are still pricing risk way above what has ever been normal in the past. And as long as that persists, it's very difficult for the economy to do anything good. So this is the other thing for us to keep an eye on, and fortunately it's easy to keep an eye on because it's various interest rates that you can monitor by looking online or in the paper anytime you want. But until the price of risk starts to come back to something closer to a normal level, again, we're going to have a very difficult time making real progress in the economy. Okay, well, that's where we are. I mean, that's our situation. And, you know, I mean, it can sound a little grim, but I want to tell you why I think that it really is a tremendous opportunity for everybody in business. And I really mean it is a huge and rare opportunity for all of us in business. And to illustrate the reason, I want to tell you a little story that isn't about business at all, although it actually is. Now, look, everybody here knows Lance Armstrong's story better than most people know. But there's an element of it that I want to focus on. Not really with his personal story at all. It has to do with 2006 Tour de France. That was the time he was trying to make history because people had won it 5 times before, but nobody had ever won it 6 times before. And that was the time he was trying to win it for the 6th time. Now, you all know it's a multi-day race, 20 stages. That race that year was mostly over, and he wasn't in first place. And it was not clear that he was going to be. What happened, however, after 14 stages, he was not in first place. The Frenchman named Thomas Vogler, who had been in first place for 10 consecutive stages, looking extremely strong. That's when the race moved to the Alps.